Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this first in a three-part series of webinars on the theme of the quest for visibility and resilience. Is existing supply chain data being underutilized, or do we need more of it? Presented by Tive. Today's episode is entitled, Imagine if visibility of all global shipments becomes a reality. What happens next? And before we move on forward with this, I want to give a quick reminder that there will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So today we're going to talk about the current state of global shipment visibility, how we can achieve fully integrated, transparent, end-to-end visibility throughout the global supply chain, and how it's going to impact stakeholders in all facets, supply chain management and operations. Allow me to introduce our distinguished speakers for today. Dr. Yossi Sheffi is the Elisha Grace II Professor of Engineering Systems at MIT, where he serves as Director of the Center for Transportation and Logistics. He's an expert in systems optimization, risk analysis, and supply chain management. Dr. Sheffi consults with leading enterprises, has founded or co-founded 5 successful companies, and is the author of 8 books. Krenar Komoni is the founder and CEO of Tive, the global supply chain visibility company. Krenar has developed breakthrough ideas in data analytics, logistics, and electronics design for nearly 20 years. He has led cross-functional teams while enhancing business performance in sales, finance, supply chain, logistics, distribution, and manufacturing. So with that, I'd like to bring in Yossi and Krenar for the panel discussion portion of our presentation. And I want to kick it off with a question for Yossi. Hello, Yossi.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us today. The big question here is, why are we now interested in visibility?
Well, in order to answer this, maybe start thinking about the past, why we're now interested in visibility. So in the past, it matters less. If you think about one of the biggest traders ever, the East India Company, in the late 1700, 1800, they controlled the trade basically between Asia and Europe. But what they were bringing in was, first of all, products. They didn't bring parts. They were bringing, all kind of product, basically from Asia to Europe. And at that time, just getting there was enough. There was big uncertainty about how long the shipment takes. And everybody was so thankful that they just arrived. And many times it did not, for a variety of reasons. So just arriving there was great. And now the Industrial Revolution changed a lot of this. Because during the Industrial Revolution, and then the outsourcing trend, we started having parts coming into plant. And this means that the notion of the golden screw means that if one part is missing in a complex product, you cannot build the product. You cannot build a car without, pistons or whatever. You need everything to have a complete car. And then with the move to just-in-time, starting to make sure that everything just works and you get what you need when you need it became paramount. At the same time, the consumer expectations grew significantly. It started with, for the consumer, basically with FedEx. It started positively, will be there the next morning, but then they added the track and tracing. They added visibility to this. And now people expect it. So customer expectation grew. On top of it, the technology became available, GPS. The global positioning system created the ability to know where everything is at any time. So we kind of now see how the convergence of technology, customer expectation, the need for just-in-time, all created paramount need for visibility, to know where stuff is at all time.
Yeah,
So let me stop here and maybe turn it to Krenar.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree, Yossi. It's back then, like you said, if you're in a watchtower, you're looking for the ship. You're like, oh, my product's coming. I'm happy, and that was it. That was visibility. You were looking at a ship coming into the port, and you could just assume that had your spices or whatever product you were waiting for. But with industrialization and the parts, that's a very good analogy on what has happened to visibility and the need. But technology is also what's converging at the same time with these customer expectation, the quote unquote, the Amazon effect, where everybody expects everything today, tomorrow. If I order something, and I think all of us do this, right? We go to Amazon, we buy something. It's the same product. If one's coming in 2 weeks and the other one's coming next day, nobody's clicking on the one that's coming in 2 weeks. You're buying the one that's coming next day because you can have it right away. So that and the convergence of tech is just the beginning of where visibility is going.
And over time, we forget that the starting technology with FedEx, for example, and still in some places, was scan-based technology. Stuff was scanned at several, points in time, usually a terminal. When it arrived to a terminal on the way, UPS, something was scanned and then uploaded to the internet. We now have the ability to be independent of the carrier, in fact. That's a huge change, being able to transmit from the package, in fact, directly. So now, regardless of the carrier, what the carrier decided, I just take it, I started my career working with a large automotive company who wanted their large transportation carrier to give them idea where the stuff is. The carrier knew it. They had the Qualcomm system at the time.
Yeah,
but they said, we are never going to give you this information. Why? Said, because when you look at every day, you see that 1,000 shipments are going to be late. What you don't realize is that we'll do things and only 100 of them will be late. But if you think that 1,000 will be late, you'll start, inundating us with questions and we will not be able to work. But having the ability to have independent, that the shipper can have independent piece of information about where stuff is, it's huge.
Interesting. So visibility goes from being a question of a trade secret, so to speak, to something that is absolutely expected, and also is such a part of the value proposition for consumers today, maybe even over speed. I mean, in terms of like where their package is at any given moment, they're happier to know that than they are to have it like in their hands 2 hours from now if they don't know when it's coming. Anyway, I want to hear a little bit more though. You mentioned about how it was scan-based, Yossi, starting with UPS and FedEx and the like, and now we have GPS and sensors. Well, maybe Krenar, you can talk a little bit more about how the technology has actually evolved, where we are today with it, and what it is offering the marketplace and consumers.
Yeah, I mean, the tech has evolved a lot. I mean, if you just look at 10 years ago, 20 years ago, as Yossi mentioned, with Qualcomm making one of the first GPS trackers for trucks and telematics. And then I think it turned into OmniTrax, from what I know, because OmniTrax bought that technology from Qualcomm. And that was revolutionary. All these carriers not could know where the trucks were. They didn't even have cell phones back then, which was really difficult. Truck drivers didn't have cell phones. So you just had to wait. You didn't know where the truck was. Did it break? What happened to it? So that visibility helped the fleet owners quite a bit. And then shippers realized, hey, we would love this information because we can tell where things are, if they're late or not. But the way they relied on this information, like you said, they were not sharing it directly with the shipper, but they would tell them on phone call, well, out of 1,000 shipments, 50 or 100, like Yossi said, are going to be late. But it was still phone call. It was still relying on the carrier. And even today, I don't know, Yossi, if you agree, but probably a lot of shipments still happen like that today. As a shipper, when it goes out, you still don't know what's happening with it.
Yeah, and partly is because, most shipments go through certain stages along the supply chain.
Yes.
And carriers are not exactly incentivized to share information with each other. And it goes to some black holes when it goes into customs, when it goes to, there are, dark spots, along the supply chain. So having something that can communicate directly through satellite to the global positioning system can work almost everywhere. So that's a
Yes.
a huge advantage. Now, we would actually like to know more. It's just that the main problem is sharing of data. Because if I'm a consumer, let's say I'm ordering a truck, I would like to know that it's now on station number 15 on the Ford assembly plant, and it goes to station number 16, and it goes to station number 17. Ford is still not releasing this information. They have it, of course, but they're not releasing this information. Again, just an example that, yeah, we would like to know even more, but as long as it's under Ford's control, they don't release it. Even though as a consumer, I'd love to know it's everywhere in the process. I'd like to know which hold it is on the ship. I'd like to know, which igloo it is on the airplane. But the availability of local, and that's very important, the low cost, which we didn't touch on yet. The OmniTrack was about $4,000 to $5,000 per truck.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Now it's basically free.
Yeah,
I mean,
20, $30 a month.
Enormous change. And it's quantum change in development.
And you can just look at this phone right here, right? The iPhone. When did it come out? The first one was like 2008, 2007, 2000.
The first iPhone 2007.
So it's 15 years ago, but 15 before that, you were flip phones. Before that, it was the brick, and all this information is becoming more powerful. But like you said, it's becoming more cost effective. One day, I really think of it most as like an iPhone on every shipment, an iPhone on every package. Not this kind of power. You don't need all this power. You don't need to stream YouTube videos, but the little chips that are telling you exactly where the shipments are at very low cost. And what's happened over time as the semiconductor industry has changed, gone from 250 nanometer, which is quarter micron, down to now we're making chips down to 10, 9, 8 nanometer technology. That's making, you can put more transistors in a single chip. You can make it even lower power, so the really tiny battery can power it. And there's a lot of new wireless protocols, technologies that are being developed, so you can transmit at very low power, consume that power, and make it last for 6 months, a year. It's been pretty exciting to see. And it's not ending, right? That Moore's law curve is continuing to be in effect.
But in the meantime, I think, Yossi, you're saying that there really isn't just one kind of visibility, that it takes many forms depending on what you're able to do, what it costs to, and what the consumer is really asking of you. Is that not correct?
Yes, but the most fundamental change happened in shipment visibility, basically, because that's when we do not have any to rely anymore. If the shipper wants to do it this way, does not have to rely on the trucker, on the airline, on the shipping company, on the railroad, on anything in between, but they can do it on. Another, maybe, I don't know if that's what you're referring to, another confusion in this business, people confuse transparency with visibility. And
what is the difference between those two?
When we talk about transparency, is letting partners, which means communities, government, one consumer know how we operate. What do we do in our supply chain processes? Because we want to be transparent about things that they cannot see. When you buy a product, you can see the color, you can taste it, you can see, how we drive, whatever. What you cannot see is if people use, slave labor in the supply chain. What you cannot see is that people were polluting the local rivers. These are the things that you cannot see. And transparency means that you open your operations to auditors, to customers, to local government. So you are operating in a transparent way. So people know what you're doing. Visibility, meaning collecting a lot of data about what's going on with a shipment, for example. And you do it for two reasons, by the way, both for real time, understanding where it is, and collecting all this data allows you to analyze it later and find out, for example, bottleneck, find out where stuff is, the average time is X, and now, a certain percent of the time it's 3 times X. where it is happening, what's the problem, where were the problems. So it's two uses, both for real time, understanding something that I can solve right now, or later on, understanding supply chain issues.
But I wonder also if, to some extent, that visibility serves as the basis for allowing transparency. I mean, Krenar, how do you see that coming? The kind of technology and systems that you just described to us that are in practice today, how do those actually end up leading to the larger question of transparency? Is there a direct line from one to the other?
It's not really direct. I think, as you said, the transparency is where customers and consumers, like a vendor, for instance, telling the world, hey, when we built this product and this ingredient had no child labor whatsoever, or if we are sending a product, we can tell a customer this battery has no lithium in it, and they can trust us. We're being very transparent on how that happened. However, visibility could potentially act as quote unquote proof of transparency. In some cases, not in every case, like visibility of a shipment cannot tell whether somebody used child labor for a part that took from point A to point B. However, they could tell that it was manufactured at this spot, and this manufacturer has been proven and it's sustainable, number one, potentially. Maybe if we're looking at ESG, has zero slave labor, and that part, which could be a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 part, went from that manufacturing site to our second manufacturing site or to our factory. And you can prove that with visibility, and you can say, well, we're being very transparent where our manufacturing is happening, or what suppliers, tier 1 or tier 2, tier 3 suppliers we're signed up for. And here's a little bit of proof. Maybe not all, but
and in many industries, it became a regulatory requirement. In pharma, you have to have this traceability. You have to show that it came exactly from this factory, because factories have to be approved. It's not just you cannot just mix ingredient anywhere you want. It has to be all these processes are regulated and approved. So you have to show that it came from an approved plant. So this is what visibility can help.
So
and pharma companies, what I've heard now, they even have a web page where you can go in and see all these, like, full transparency.
Yes.
Yeah. So two streams of data and intelligence come together. One, the visibility of the state of where a particular shipment is, and then the larger issue of whether it should be there in the first place, based on your knowledge of acceptable points of manufacture. Now, another thing I want to ask the two of you, and there's another favorite word that we're all throwing around today, and that is resilience. I'm not sure exactly what it means in the context of today's discussion, but I'd like to hear the two of you talk about what might be the role of visibility in building resilience. Yossi, what do you think about that?
Okay, so let me first explain resilience, and I should be able, after writing 4 books about it. So
half of the books were in resilience.
Yes. So first of all, if you don't understand resilience, buy one of my books. But no, I'm just kidding. Resilience is basically a term taken from material science. It's the ability of a metal to retain its former shape after deformation. When we are talking about business, we are talking about the ability of a company to get back to level of manufacturing, customer service, whatever the key performance indicator is, after some type of disruption. So resilience has in it the ability to respond, the ability to mitigate. You should come back and keep the customers happy, basically, when something happens to you. And that's, of course, different from risk, because risk, and sometimes people confuse resilience with risk. Risk is the potential that something bad will happen. And and resilience is the ability to respond, mitigate, do something when something bad happens.
What do you think, Krenar, in terms of resilience? How do you view that from the backdrop and perspective of visibility?
So perspective visibility, maybe I'll add another analogy, because I agree with Yossi on how he's definitely looking at it. And risk is, for instance, COVID. Risk is what's happening with the war in Ukraine right now, right? Those are risks, and risks usually, I look at them as shocks to the system. And shock absorbers, you drive a car. Imagine if you didn't have a shock absorber, right? All the risks are the potholes, the rocks, the things that you're gonna hit while you're driving. If you didn't have the shock absorbing system, you would be everything, all the Dunkin' Donuts coffee, everything would be flying around the car. So the idea is how do you create shock absorbent inside your business so you are quote unquote resilient. So when that shock happens, you go back to quote unquote normal, or back to serving your customers, back to that output of production that you had. But in order to do that, I think visibility is important. Because if you didn't have visibility of that potholes coming up, if you didn't have visibility that rocks coming up, meaning you can avoid it sometimes. You can take a left and take a little bit of right. You don't have to hit, even though you have shock absorbers, you don't have to hit them. So they go hand in hand. But that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. It's to know as early as possible that something is coming, because that something unexpected is happening. Because if you know it early, you can do something to avoid it. And even if you cannot avoid it, you can give your customers who will be impacted by it enough time to do his or her thing in order to mitigate the impact of something to happen. There's another issue, all in terms of resilience and mitigation. If you know where everything is and something happens, for example, a port closure, but now you know where everything is, you can reroute it. You can go, because okay, this stuff that's already in the port, I'm not getting, but there are 5 drums of this somewhere else, and I can reroute them and get. So you can do something with it. You can take a corrective action. You can expedite something that the automotive industry does all the time. You can get the. I know of automotive plants sometimes something, because they don't have good visibility. The truck comes to the plant and it comes in 15 minutes, on the line, very JIT.
Yeah.
They don't have a part. They send a helicopter to pick the part from a supplier. That's outrageously expensive. And if they have a little more time, they'll send a special truck just to keep up one part in order not to stop the manufacturing plant, because the cost of these are outrageous.
Yeah. So speaking of phrases that people love to throw around these days, I'm wondering if, when Nassim Nicholas Taleb coined the concept of the black swan, everybody goes around saying now, well, that was a black swan event, almost as an excuse for there's no way we could have prepared for that. But you seem to be suggesting that maybe, in fact, as opposed to just using that as an excuse, that this level of visibility could help to mitigate that.
Look, I couldn't agree more. The idea of an excuse of a black swan, first of all, you can prepare, for example, visibility is one type of preparation for whatever happens. You don't know if it's a port closure or pandemic or something, whatever happened, now you have a tool that helps you. So the idea that, and by the way, you can prepare for a lot of things. One of the disasters during the pandemic was we didn't have PPEs. Well, guess what? Clinton built a PPE national inventory, and Bush built it even more, and then it went down during Obama and went to nothing during the Trump administration. So we got to where we are, unfortunately. But again, you can prepare for a lot of stuff, and visibility is one of the most important tools to give you early warning.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, everything we're talking about so far today, and maybe understandably from the standpoint of people's concerns, is the benefits of visibility in a crisis. And definitely we've seen nothing but a series of crises for the last several years. But I'm wondering, in a larger sense, and the bigger picture of visibility, are there other benefits that visibility yields when the skies are not falling? What do you think, Yossi?
Oh, sure. Look,
That's the best time, right, for visibility.
Yeah, well, assuming that such a time even exists or will exist in future. I mean, you've got to think that it's be larger benefits at hand.
When you ask, your question was the sky enough, when there's not a pandemic or a war, a major disaster.
Sure.
Demand is still uncertain. Right. Nobody calls Stop and Shop or Kruger and tell them I'm coming in 45 minutes to get a quart of milk. Demand happens when demand happens. So you have to, in order to make sure that you can serve demand, people keep safety stock in order to take care of the fluctuation of demand. But the fluctuation comes from two sources. They come from the demand and they come from the supply. If you know when stuff is coming to you, you can do two things. First of all, you can make sure that you don't run out. But even if you run out, you come to the store, to the dealer, to whoever, and they can tell you, you know what, in 1 day and 5 hours, it will be here. Or come the next morning, I'll have it wrapped up for you, whatever it is, because they see that it's coming. So that is something that can even use to reduce safety stock. It can certainly be used to reduce the, I cannot tell you how many industries you have material handlers who sit in banks of telephones and calling the supplier, calling the carrier, where is my stuff? Where is my stuff? It's just to make sure that it arrives on time and the plant manager doesn't get fired. Yeah. So it is something that does, of course, help you day to day.
Yeah. What do you think, Krenar? Do you think visibility definitely has a larger value proposition just over and above getting us through the crisis of the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if there's no war, there's no pandemics, there's other issues that happen every day. A truck breaks down, or a refrigerator breaks down, and you have a trailer full of strawberries, blueberries. You have a trailer full of asparagus, and it's supposed to be close to 32, 33 Fahrenheit, and suddenly it's 50 degrees. You can prevent that, especially with understanding in real time what's happening with that refrigerator. Doesn't have to be pandemic, it doesn't have to be war, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that you could be losing. Those products are not on the shelf at Kroger, Stop and Shop, Walmart, wherever, right? Costco. And then that consumer is not seeing your product. Not that you just lost revenue, but also you lost a potential customer that was loyal to your brand. Now that's going to go to another brand and buy some other product. So those are, visibility is, it can help a lot around this customer service and customer experience. Even my example that I think, I don't know if I used before, but it's true. Just few months ago, my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, he's moving to a new house and he's waiting for his floors. So he bought floors, brand new floors, and they were like, oh, they're coming. He's like, when? Oh, in 2 weeks. Oh, we don't know where they are. Oh, they were supposed to be at this port. It's like 2 months later, he still doesn't have floor. He's paying rent because he can't move to his house because he has no clue where the floors are. These things happen all over the world, every customer. And if they had a GPS tracker or something on those floors, or they figured out the container was being tracked somehow, they would know where things were, but they don't know today. So a lot of customers are upset.
I'll give you another example. My latest book was printed in Asia. They told me they sent to us a box of 100 books. They say on their system, it arrived at MIT 3 weeks ago.
Oh, great.
MIT on their system say the delivery to my office. The only fly in the ointment is it's nowhere to be seen.
Oh, good.
Where the hell is it? I mean, it's actually a case that we just did with it this morning. Where nobody knows. We looked at it.
It got to your office in the metaverse. It got there in virtual reality.
These are pieces of a big box of books. I mean, where is it?
But you know, in the days of just in time before this latest crisis, the dogma was, we kept hearing and again, information replaces inventory. So that supposedly in a perfect world, if you had all this great visibility, you wouldn't need any safety stock. You're not saying that, are you, Yossi?
Look, in order to not to have safety stock at all, we need the two sides, both the demand and the supply. Perfect visibility will solve the supply problem. I mean, we would know where everything is, we would be able to order, everything will come on time, that's great. If we can condition the consumer to shop when we want them to shop, but anybody who thinks this way have not dealt with my wife. So it's just, I don't think this is in the cards because, 20 minutes before she goes to the store, she doesn't know she's going to go to the store. So if she doesn't know, how would
Or what she's going to buy once she gets there.
of course she does, what she's going to buy, depending on what's in the store. The
Yeah.
more in the store, the more she'll buy. But which is an argument for keeping store inventory.
Look what happened with toilet paper, right? Even people, they didn't have to buy all of it, but they went and bought 2, 3. I bought 2 or something.
Well,
Like,
that's the
it's
human
just-
psychology, the panic
just human.
psychology that takes
Yeah.
hold. And even that has to be figured into thinking about what's going to happen in the future, that consumers acting irrationally.
It's
And
not, by the way, it's not only consumers. We see now big companies,
Yes,
Walmart,
businesses.
one of the best in supply chain management, and many other companies, Siemens, Mercedes, they all announce huge stocks, huge inventories. And they are starting, a lot of the retailers are starting to run promotions now because they are got too much inventory, sometimes of the wrong stuff. I know manufacturers have a lot of the wrong inventory because they are the same. It's really amazing to think that sophisticated manufacturing got into hoarding out of panic. But it's a system, the board
Yeah.
is riding on the CEO is riding on the operations manager, riding on the material handler. Where's the stuff? Okay, I'll order more. I mean, and now
So I heard there's even I think a bill or something that wants to get passed. So because I've heard there's a lot of orders that went out. Now people are canceling. Businesses are actually canceling orders, and there's a new
Right.
bill that's being passed by the government saying, hey, if you ordered something, you get to buy it. You can't cancel because everybody on the supply side is preparing
Yeah,
for you
but
to get the stuff.
on the consumer level, we're also hearing, well, there's stuff on the shelves now, but customers don't want it anymore. So
Yes.
aligning those two things is just such a challenge. I know we're going to get to the point we're going to run out of time here, but I just want to ask you guys to kind of take us beyond shipment visibility. Where do we go from here beyond modes? I mean, what is the future of visibility? Yossi, maybe you could give us a crystal ball kind of picture.
Yeah,
here.
the crystal ball will have to do with more sharing of data. That's the crystal ball. Because right now, a shipper, even think about a retailer that wants to have inbound shipment visibility, they'll have inbound shipment visibility from tier 1 supply chain.
Yes.
It's very hard to get it beyond. Now, if we can get, tier 2 giving to tier 1, tier 3 giving to tier 2, and they're all uploading it to some secure website, then we're starting to have real end-to-end visibility, which we don't have really now end-to-end. We have tier 1 to end, or sometimes tier 2 to end, but it's very hard to go beyond that. And there are actually structural problems in doing this, because in many cases, tier 1 doesn't want to tell the OEM who tier 2 is. It's a trade secret, because sometimes they're afraid they'll go around them. Sometimes they just trade secrets. And then you go down to tier 3, 4, 5. They make stuff they don't even know that it's going to the OEM. They make stuff that's going to some other stuff, into some other stuff that then gets to the OEM at the end. So, but this problem can be solved by technology, but it has to do with people willing to share and people willing to upload data. And it's harder when there's no what we call supply chain master. When Walmart is sitting there, they can tell its tier 1 supplier what to do. But mostly that's where it ends up.
Krenar, how do you see the future of visibility?
I see that obviously as tech is going to get more and more evolved, as we discussed, it's going more towards shipments and cargo. Like that way we're tracking not the actual asset that's moving the goods, but the actual goods. That will happen. I mean, you look at kind of technologies these days, I don't want to show our tech here, as I've promised this is an educational session. We're not going to promote anything here, but technology is getting better. And I believe it's going to go more towards shipments and cargo. The other thing, I think what's going to happen, if you look at what's happening in the crypto world, I don't know if we're going to learn something from it in blockchain and how they're doing things there. Maybe we can learn some of the things, not today, but in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. And Yossi, what you mentioned, tier 3 not sharing to tier 2 and tier 1 because they don't want to know that it's my secret supplier. maybe you can at least tell that it's going to be on time or it left the supplier. You don't have to show, like, visibility doesn't always mean longitude and latitude. It could also mean, hey, based on the longitude, latitude, I'm deriving these second, third, four tier information that I can share. I can share level 1, 2, and not level 1, not level 2, but I can share level 3 and 4 information that's derived from level 1 and 2. Maybe I think that's what's going to start to happen, but we have a lot of work to get there.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely, absolutely. No, it's a good vision. I agree. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, those are some great insights from both of you, and thank you so much for answering my questions to the extent that there are any answers to these questions today about visibility and where it's going. But at this point, let's move into the audience question and answer portion of our presentation, because we have quite a few questions from the audience. And even as we are answering these questions now, there's still time for you to submit your questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to kind of throw it into the mix and see who wants to take this and who wants to respond. And let's see if we can get some response to what our audience is asking us today.
And by the way, we're getting a lot of questions, so this is awesome.
We are getting a lot of questions, boy, definitely. And it's a great audience today. So here's one. In terms of real-time visibility, have you seen any technologies that are able to track at the SKU or part level across supply chain transportation modes, truck, rail, ocean, air, etc.? What do you think? Krenar, maybe you
Krenar.
go with that.
you are it.
So
It just so happened that
Gee, we got the right guy.
SKU, right? SKU, if it's a really big SKU, I think it's pretty easy. There's technologies like we've developed these trackers that are 5G, they connect to 4G, they connect to 2G, they connect to all over the world, and you can attach it to the product and you know exactly in real time exactly where the shipments are. But then if the SKUs are becoming smaller and smaller, meaning if you're in a package, or then it becomes difficult to put these on every single package. But what we've developed recently, for instance, there's technologies like these. This is not real time, but it measures temperature and it stores temperature for a very long time. And then you can read it with a phone later. But in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, the technology to make it real time, know exactly where the shipments are, even down to SKU level, will happen. It's inevitable. But today we're not fully there yet, because maybe we can do something, but it's going to cost $50-$60. So it's not, we got to get it down to a sub $10 level to be able to get to that type of visibility. So there's a lot of technology that exists today, but down to small package level, SKU level in real time, we're not there yet.
Okay. We have a questioner here who observes or suggests that carriers such as ocean carriers, direct airlines, are not especially incentivized to improve visibility and data just because they're kind of in the driver's seat right now, that they can say no to new customers, that they basically the power rests with them. And it says, until this attitude changes on the carrier side, how can technology overcome the gap of them not focusing on data quality?
Well, the good news is we are likely to have a recession. So it's good news. Of course, it's not good news, but I think it's almost baked in. Almost. It's not, nothing. It's sure. But you know, it goes in sinus waves. Carrier has the power, shipper has the power. Carrier has the power. The good thing about technology is that once you get in, it's in. Once you get the mindset that you transmit where stuff is, it's in. The second thing is, and the most important, one of the most important point that was made earlier today during this webinar, is that now tracking can be independent of the carrier. So if the supplier puts a tracker like this, like the one that the Krenar showed on the package, then it's being tracked regardless of the carrier. Doesn't matter what the carrier wants to do it or not. So you can have it anyway. Yeah.
And I would say that I think we're still not there yet, but if you think of carriers being able to, today you book a load, you pay it, and you expect that visibility data to come in, but maybe there's a way to incentivize them with micro payments. And today, with the issue with micropayments, I think is that there's fees everywhere. If you send somebody $1, you got to pay 20 cents to send that dollar. But maybe in the future, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, those micropayments are going to be more acceptable, and we can make that a reality. But I see it looks like Bob will probably be joining, but maybe I can look at the questions here from the audience and pick something here. So this is a good one maybe for you, Yossi. Aren't risk and resilience related capabilities true? Don't we need the ability to predict or at least anticipate risk and uncertainty, and then design networks that can have capabilities that make them resilient in the face of those specific risks? Then, of course, someone has to spend real money to design that resiliency. Appreciate the speaker's point of view on this.
Yeah, of course. This looks like a question that I paid somebody money to ask. Thinking about there are several questions there. First of all, building in resilience, you're absolutely, it costs money. Furthermore, it's money that you pay now for capability that you may lose later. Worse, it's capability that you hope you'll never use. So start thinking about resilience in terms of insurance. It's like insurance. You pay premium, you hope you'll never know it. Only building resilience is better than insurance. Why? First of all, insurance will compensate you only financially. It will not compensate you for lost customer. It will not compensate you. It compensates you for specific things that you are insuring. Second, once you have to activate insurance, it's an antagonistic process. You know, the insurance company really doesn't want to pay. You know, many times you have to go to court, and now you have to start talking about it. I have seen many companies that in their annual report writing that one of the risks that they face is the insurance will not pay, and that's a third reason to buy to build insurance, to build resilience. Resilience has to do with being the ability to flex, to change, you know, to mitigate. You can actually respond better to good events. Your demand suddenly goes up. You don't need to respond only to
pandemics.
You respond to good news. You know, something, okay, now you know where everything is. Talking again about visibility. Stuff is already, you know, just left the port. It's supposed to go on the train. Now put it on a truck. Get it, you know, faster to the store because demand is booming. You can do things even when, you know, not only if there's a problem, but take care of opportunities. So there are many reasons that the concept of resilience is even better than insurance. But it's true that you pay now for something that you may not use later. It's basically, you think about it as an option. You build an option, like insurance.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's products that customers really, really love, and because there was no way for them to get them, they go to another product, and then that other product becomes famous out of nowhere. It's like, I remember with even Apple Maps, when they built it and they didn't have Google Maps, they didn't allow it for a few weeks when it came out. And the next thing you know, everybody started using Waze out of the blue because you couldn't go to Google Maps, and Apple Maps was not the best. Here's a question. Hey, Bob.
My apologies, guys. It's always apt that in any discussion of technology fails you while you're having it. So I'm sorry that I was kicked off there. I don't know where we are in terms of the questions. Have we covered everything, or there's I think we have more to say here?
I guess one that maybe Yossi, you have an answer to this. How has the pharma industry been able to achieve level of transparency and that has not been in other industries? Is it because of safety or government or regulatory?
Mostly they have to, because of government regulations. They have to do it. Of course, government regulations are driven by safety. I mean, they want to make sure that the right ingredient, only approved ingredient, only from approved factories come to this. So they have to be able to demonstrate the provenance of their stuff. So, and of course, they added a lot of stuff after the, some event. But in any case, it's driven by, first of all, even without regulation, the companies are very, very sensitive to safety. Remember what happened with the Tylenol? It almost brought J&J down. I mean, it's they handled it well, but it was, these things are scary for because not only when it happened with Tylenol, other J&J product also took a hit because consumer lost trust until they realized it's not J&J, but it took a while, and J&J, and Tylenol was out of the market for years. So these companies are very, very sensitive. And by the way, they're not the only ones. Airlines are very sensitive to the quality of the parts that they put in. And they also track their parts and try to make sure they get genuine parts. The military, extremely sensitive to parts. There have been cases in the military when they got chips that were not, that were just paved over rather than, new chips. So they are also very, very sensitive and track and trace everything to make sure it comes from the right place and go to the right depot. So all these people who care, this come not from inventory considerations, come from safety considerations to make sure that what
and
they
especially
got.
if there's a life and death situation, then it's no question.
But you see, it's also in food. When you have a food problem and you want to trace it to find out, okay, which field was it coming from? There have been unbelievable cases of the Spanish cucumbers. A few years ago, there was some green stuff that Europe got, crazy over. People got sick, got diarrhea, some of them died in Germany. And somebody decided that it was Spanish
Cucumbers.
Spanish stuff. The Spanish GDP went down several significant points until they found out that it's actually a German field. But it took 6 weeks or 8 weeks to find out exactly what it was, because they didn't have traceability. They didn't know where it's coming from. Finally, they found out. But in the meantime, actually, Spain tried to sue the EU because of this. They lost, hundreds of millions of dollars because they did not have it.
Yeah.
Okay. This question about, I guess you talked a little bit about this, but this questioner is saying what happens to supplier privacy, which is critical, especially in the manufacturing sector, if every point of the supply chain is made quote unquote visible. Questioner says, I understand the transparency piece, but I'm wondering where the point of balance is between privacy versus transparency.
Well, as somebody mentioned here, if you look at what's the company that makes fleece out in California, you can go on the website and find out where every part of the fleece is being made. Patagonia is very transparent. You go on the website, you look at the item that you want to buy, and you can look at a map that says every part, where the zippers are being made, where stuff is being. You click on a supplier and find out who the supplier is, what they're doing. The Starbucks has the cafe standard. They can go down to the field and tell you which field, the coffee beans are coming from. So some companies are, of course, investing a lot in this and finding out exactly where stuff is coming from. It's for them, it's the way of doing business. But actually, Krenar touched upon this and actually said it, that you can, if people are worried about not so much privacy, but trade secrets, where stuff is coming from, you can mask it. You can mask it by, you don't have to know where,
the name of the supplier,
example,
the exact location. You don't have to.
Tier 2 suppliers know exactly who is Tier 3 because they are paying them. So they know exactly where they are and what they're doing. If they can get something that they trusted information, that it left, it's now on, certain, 10 hours from getting to the plant, that information is extremely useful and can be integrated into real-time visibility.
Yeah, so I think privacy is important, especially if you look at drivers too, right? With carriers, you don't want to know that it's Jim or John or somebody driving or the truck. You don't, you want to know where your product is, but you don't need to know that it's the person's name and their social security and who's driving the truck. So there's a balance there.
Okay, great. Are there geography-specific differences to acquiring carrier data? And if yes, which or what? Unless there's adoption across geographies, won't end-to-end visibility continue to remain a challenge?
The short answer is yes. I mean, it's, you know, as we said, a lot of it has to do with collaboration, maturity, honestly, realizing that it helps everybody. It can be part of, you know, the OEM or the largest beast along the supply chain, laying out the rules. This is how we do business. But there are always, you know, issues in geographies, in, you know, smaller providers, smaller, you know. Look, we now have a project in Mexico City. They have over 1 million nano stores. I mean, family-owned little bodegas. 10% of them go out of business every month. So and so the churn is unbelievable. It just creates social problem. It creates a business problem. We are working with FEMSA, which is the deliver Coca-Cola and other products to the store. They're taking their hair out because they come to us. They don't know who is this still in business or not. How do we set up the routing to deliver the stuff? So there's a convergence of business and social objective to try to, you know, to mitigate this. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just a couple more minutes here. We have to wrap up, but perhaps a question for Krenar. Given the current state of global trade, that is war, pandemic, government restrictions, inflation, et cetera, is there a particular portion of the supply chain that has proved to be more difficult to accomplish visibility?
Any portion of the supply chain that's proven more difficult. I mean, as long as you can, for us, the way we work, right? As long as you can get trackers there, I think then you get to figure out visibility from there, but it becomes more difficult in some areas, right? If you look at east of Ukraine, there's a lot of cell towers that have gone down. Now, it doesn't matter whether you have telematics in a truck or you have a GPS tracker, there's no way you're communicating that data up from there. So some areas like that become more difficult to get visibility, but those are extremes. Okay,
great. Well, that does, we are out of time then on the main portion of our presentation and Q&A. I'm sure that our guests or our speakers would be happy to answer the questions offline that did not get addressed today.
Yes.
But we do have time for just one final question, and that's, I'm going to pose it first to Krenar and see what he has to say. And this is our kind of our takeaway question. Out of all the benefits that you and Yossi have discussed today, what would be the most important benefit that customers can get from visibility today?
The most important benefit, I think it would be to make sure that your customers are not blind of what's happening with your supplies and with your shipments and with the deliveries that you have to them. I think that's the worst thing you can do to your customer. That's the worst thing you can do to your any consumer customer that you have, for them not knowing that something's going to be late, not knowing that something's going to be delayed, that's not knowing that something's maybe not going to arrive on time, and being more transparent to them because of the visibility that you're getting. I think the biggest benefit you're going to get is that. And then what happens is you get customer loyalty, your customers are going to trust you more, and they are going to continue to do business with you. And the only way you're going to be transparent with them, I think this is where we tie it a little bit, is if you have visibility of what's happening with your goods. So I would say that's the biggest benefit. I don't know, Yossi, what do you think?
Well, of course, if you are managing a big automotive plant, having visibility mean that you can keep your job. Because if
another way to look at it.
If something happens and you have to stop a production plant for an hour, and you don't make the 60 cars that were supposed to make in this hour, it doesn't matter. You paid already for these cars. You didn't get to collect revenue. And this is the stuff that big plant manager get to lose their job over. So I agree, of course, that customer is the most important thing, but there are other issues that can
Yeah.
be added.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've had a really enlightening hour about the power and promise of supply chain visibility, to the extent whether or not it's end to end, when, if not, will it ever be? So for that, I want to thank our great speakers today, Dr. Yossi Sheffi of MIT and Krenar Komoni of Tive. I do want to note that you should join us on August 17th at 10 a.m. Eastern for the second in this three-part series on the quest for visibility and resilience. Question being, is existing supply chain data being underutilized, or do we need more of it? The topic next time will be the quest for the enlightened supply chain. You'll get more information in a follow-up email along with the URL to register. So again, thanks everybody. Thanks, Yossi. Thanks, Krenar, and thanks to our audience for your attendance and for your great questions. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, have a great day.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you,
Thank you.
Yossi.
Thanks, everybody.